What is up, my friends? Welcome back to Flippin' Bats, where had a little bit of time off. Appreciate everybody's understanding of the situation, figuring out the schedule. There's a lot going on in studio, and just had some scheduling stuff to figure out. But we're back, and we'll be back soon after this as well. Pumped to be back today. We're going to talk top three surprises in baseball so far, top three disappointments. We have power rankings. And we have some fan questions. We're going to talk about Edwin Diaz getting suspended for sticky stuff. We're going to talk about Paul Skeens potentially being an all-star. We'll see. And we're going to talk about the Mariners and if they are good enough, essentially. But we are almost exactly one halfway through the season, which is wild. But, a lot of teams have played exactly half their games. We're right around there at this point. So that's why I want to do top three surprises, top three disappointments. We're going to start with the positive and start with top three surprises. For me, number three, the Kansas City Royals. How much this offseason did I talk about the Royals and how impressed I was with their offseason, how proud I was that they were going for it after being awful last year, losing over 100 games. They make more moves than anybody this offseason, more free agent pickups than anybody. And now they're sitting at 42 and 37 entering this new week. They're a half a game out of a playoff spot, and a lot of their new acquisitions have been phenomenal. Seth Lugo, 10-2 with a 2.42 ERA. The guy should be an all-star. It was an extremely underrated pickup on their part. He's been phenomenal. Bobby Witt Jr. has emerged to become even more of a superstar than it already looked like he might be. The dude does it all. Plays great defense, hits for power, steals bases, hits for a high average. He's unbelievable. He's one of the best shortstops in the game of baseball, if not the best shortstop in the game of baseball right now. But Gunnar Henderson would have a word or two there. But I've just been really, really impressed with the Kansas City Royals. They deserve a ton of credit for the turnaround that they've had so far this year. They're fighting for a playoff spot halfway through the year. Kansas City, that stadium, Kauffman is rocking. And it's just a lot of fun to watch Royals baseball right now, which I knew they'd be better. I was thinking maybe around a 500 team, and that would be a success for this year. But so far, halfway through, they are an above 500 team and potentially looking to make the playoffs. So they're here for me at number three as top surprises. Number two, the Cleveland Guardians. How do you not have the Guardians on this list? They are 7.5 games up in the American League Central. I honestly could have said the AL Central for biggest surprises, but I went Royals and then Guardians, who have been great. And if you were to tell me that they would be where they are at the beginning of the year, where they are in the standings, 7.5 games up with Stephen Vogt at the helm, I would have said, one, I don't believe you. And two, if that is the case, their pitching has to have been phenomenal. But it really hasn't been that for them. They're pitching well, but it's been their offense and their defense has been phenomenal. That offense, I've say it a million times, but I'll keep saying it. Jose Ramirez is the most underrated player in the game of baseball. He's an absolute star. He does it all. He's comparing himself to Barry Bonds out there and backing it up with great play. Josh Naylor, one of the most clutch hitters in the game of baseball. Steven Kwan is the American League version of Luis Ariz. The lineup is just so fun and deep, honestly. They really have had guys step up later in the lineup that have been huge for them. When I look at this team, I think, man, if they just had a starter or two, because they have the most dominant closer in the game of baseball right now. Emmanuel Clase has been unbelievable. Best closer in baseball this year. If they can add a starter or two, I don't want to get greedy, but a guy that you can throw out there early on in a playoff series, if not one, your number two guy. They need a top end starter, especially with Shane Bieber not pitching this year after going down with Tommy John surgery early on. Tristan McKenzie hopefully can continue to ramp up after his injuries and get that velocity back. But man, I look at this team and it has been the offense that's carried them, not the pitching. So if they're looking for a move at the deadline, go out and get you a pitcher. There are going to be some pitchers available, and more of those are going to become apparent when teams start falling out of the playoff race. So I have the Guardians at number two. There's easily a case for them at number one. But for me, the top surprise of the 2024 season is the New York Yankees. I was high on the Yankees this year. I thought they would be good. I thought they would be better than most people out there were giving them credit for. I thought the addition of Juan Soto was more than enough to change that team. A lot of people were saying, oh, one addition. I know Juan Soto's good, but they weren't a playoff team last year. They were barely a 500 team last year. How is one player going to make all the difference? And then you have Garrett Cole, who's not going to pitch for half of the year. Well, guess what? I did believe Juan Soto was that good and can change a lineup as a whole. Not only has Juan Soto been the perfect addition to that lineup, he's allowed everybody else to fall into a bit of a different role. Aaron Judge doesn't necessarily have to carry the team. If Aaron Judge isn't playing, or if Aaron Judge is playing poorly like he was for the first half of the year, the Yankees can still win ball games because they have Juan Soto. Giancarlo Stanton doesn't have to be that same guy in the lineup that he's been needing to be for the last couple of years because you have Juan Soto. And what has that allowed? It's allowed Giancarlo Stanton, who's unfortunately hurt right now, to kind of take a one step lower of a role. And he has thrived there. He's had a resurgence of a year. He's been really, really good. And I think the addition of Juan Soto, surrounding a lineup with greatness, allows everybody else to be better. You know, the old saying, hitting is contagious. That's largely an annoying, cheesy phrase in the game of baseball, but it's true. And in both directions, hitting's a snowball effect. When it's going great, it's going great. When it's going bad, it's going bad. So having a guy like Juan Soto and Aaron Judge in that lineup is more than enough to supplement the poor play from last year. And now you get Garrett Cole back. They have done all of this year. They have been the number one team in baseball this year for a large part of the year without the best pitcher in the game of baseball. They've been doing it with Marcus Stroman, Carlos Rodon, Luis Gil, who's been fantastic, and Nestor at the bottom of that rotation. And now they finally get Garrett Cole back, and it just feels like they're in a position to really go now and be them full selves and their true selves, even though they are dealing with a bit of injuries right now. But for me, by far, the biggest surprise of the 2024 season has been the New York Yankees and just how good they've been without Garrett Cole. So for me, I go Royals at 3, Guardians at 2, New York Yankees as the top surprise of the 2024 season. Can't do surprises without doing disappointments, though. Again, we're about halfway through the season, and here are the top 3 disappointments so far this year. I don't know if a lot of people will have them on this list, but I was really high on them this year, as you all know. So I'm going to put them on my list of top 3 disappointments. At number 3, the Cincinnati Reds. They're 36-41 entering this new week, and it's just been abysmal, for lack of a better word. Luckily for them, they are in the National League where everybody but the Marlins and the Rockies are well within reach of a playoff spot. So all you got to do is have a week where you get hot and you're right where you need to be. But I've just been disappointed in the Cincinnati Reds. Offensively, it's been a nightmare. I believed in this pitching staff with them adding Frankie Montas, and I love Nick Lodolo and what he brings to the table, and Hunter Green. And the pitching has been adequate. I mean, they play in a tough ballpark to be a pitcher. But it's the offense for me that ranks 26th in all of baseball in team batting average, and they're pretty much bottom 10 in every other offensive category, unless you want to throw in stolen bases, in which Elly De La Cruz is helping that out tremendously. But offensively, it's unacceptable for the Cincinnati Reds, with a lineup that was good last year and ready to take another step, for them to be this bad. And I know there's injuries. I know they've dealt with some stuff. I know they've dealt with McClain going down and not playing all year, and Noelvi Marte getting suspended, and TJ Friedel being hurt for a while. And yes, of course, the names go on and on there, but you do have a lineup that is good enough to be competitive. And in that ballpark, which is a hitter's ballpark, for them to be bottom 10 in pretty much every offensive category and 26th out of 30 in team batting average is just extremely disappointing to me. And that's why they're here on this top 3 most disappointing teams list at number 3. So moving on, number 2, the reigning World Series champions are on this list for me, the Texas Rangers. They are 37-40. In 2023, they had the best offense in baseball. The best. This year, they're pretty much bottom 10 in every category you can find. There's a lot of reasons. Again, injuries are a part of it, but it doesn't make them any less disappointing this year. Evan Carter who I thought was going to have a really good year and be potentially the American League Rookie of the Year in his first full season. He was pretty bad when he was playing, and now he's been hurt for a while and not playing. So Evan Carter, Josh Young goes down with an injury. Corey Seager was hurt to start the year and then really bad when he was playing. And then you wonder, is he still dealing with an injury? And then Adolis Garcia. Adolis Garcia had one of the best postseason runs that I can remember in a long time. He was phenomenal in the postseason. Good last year. Last year, he hit 245 on the year with a 328 on base percentage and a 508 slugging percentage. All right. Think of those numbers: 245, 328, 508. This year, 214, 276, 399. A 214 batting average, a 276 on base percentage, and he's only slugging 399. They need him to be a guy in that lineup. You have Simeon and Seager, but you need that guy to be Adolis Garcia there in that 3-4 hole and drive those guys in. He hasn't been that guy for a lot of reasons: injuries, underperformance, whatever you want to say. The Rangers have been bad, but they have to be here on this top 3 disappointing list for the 2024 season. They did get Max Scherzer back over the weekend. He pitched on Sunday, threw 5 innings, didn't give up a single run, only gave up 1 hit, struck out 4 guys. That would be huge for them. But they have to be willing to, they have to have the offense get going. Here's why. If you're the Rangers and you're the Rangers front office and you paid all the money in the world to Jacob deGrom to be an ace of that staff, if you're sitting here, we're halfway through the year. Not quite for them. They've played 77 games. 81 is the halfway mark. We're halfway through the year, and they're under 500 and really not that close to a playoff spot currently. They have turned it around a bit. They've won 4 games in a row, crept back in the division race. I got to see a lot more of this. Or what is the incentive for the Rangers to bring back Jacob deGrom? There's talks he's getting closer and starting to throw and throwing off of a mound, but that doesn't mean he's anywhere close to being ready to come back. So if we're going to talk late July, early August, and the Rangers are still a below 500 team and still about 7 to 10 games out of a playoff spot, what's the incentive to bring back Jacob deGrom at that point? So for me, the Rangers playing better is important for multiple reasons. Obviously, to get to where they need to go, but I don't think they rush back. They're not going to rush back deGrom, but I don't think they do anything close to what he possibly could do if they're not in contention for a playoff spot. Why would they? So that's going to be huge for them down the stretch. Keep an eye on that. The Rangers come in at number 2. My number 1 biggest disappointment for the 2024 season thus far is the Houston Astros. The Houston Astros are 38-40. They're about 6 games out of first place as we enter this new week. The positives being 5 days ago, they were 10 games out of first place. They have won 5 games in a row, while the Mariners have been losing a bunch of ball games and losing to the best team in the National League in a series. So the Astros have crept back in it, but by and large, how can they not be my number 1 biggest disappointment? Of course, everyone expected them to be, and nobody expected this step back. And I know people are rooting for the downfall of the Astros, but that doesn't mean you are expecting the downfall of the Astros to come this year. And I'm still not so sure that's the case. And anybody that's ever listened to the show knows I have stood my ground and saying, I believe the Astros will make the playoffs. At not a single point this year have I wavered from that. Have I gotten a little more worried? Sure, absolutely. My worry meter ranged from a 4 to a 3, back up to a 4. And I would have the worry meter now probably back down to a 3, if I'm being honest. I'm a little less worried, but they have been the biggest disappointment. Offensively, they have been good, which is even more of a reason why I am disappointed in where they are right now. You can talk about injuries, again, with all of these teams. Sure, if you're a fan of the Reds, you're a fan of the Rangers, you're a fan of the Astros, we can sit here and say, well, injuries have played a big role in that. I don't care. Honestly, do injuries play a big role? Absolutely. Did I expect the Houston Astros to be rolling out, Spencer Arrighetti in a start and need him to step up, which he has lately? But did I expect the rotation to be Spencer Arrighetti and Ronel Blanco all year, who also has been really, really good so far and should be an all-star? But yes, the injuries have been a big role. I expected the rotation to be Justin Verlander, Framber Valdez, and then eventually get Jose Urquidy and Luis Garcia, and then eventually Lance McCullers. That didn't happen to start the year. In fact, to start the year, it was a shell of that. And now you're hearing Tommy John news about a couple of the guys in the rotation and that they're not going to pitch all year long. So the rotation has been a big problem, but the biggest for me has been that bullpen. A bullpen that I believed was going to be the best in baseball. Maybe not the deepest, but the best 7, 8, 9 in a bullpen that anybody has to offer, with Brian Abreu, with Ryan Presley, with Josh Hader. I would say they've all underperformed my expectations, especially Ryan Presley. That he's obviously sliding out of that closer role when you sign a Josh Hader to the biggest closer contract there is. But I expected him to be good in that eighth inning role, and he's just taken a big step backwards this year. A lot of games have been blown in that eighth inning. Brian Abreu started off pretty rough. He's doing better. Same with Josh Hader, a couple blown saves, but starting to pitch better and better. So the back end of the bullpen is getting better, but it has been rough so far this year. So the offense is doing their part, but here we are, the Houston Astros, who have been to 7 consecutive ALCSs, and right now, at the halfway mark of the year, 78 games into the year, they are under 500 and about 6 games back from first place in that division. They are in second. The Rangers have been poor. Luckily for them, the Seattle Mariners have not grasped this division lead and run with it. They've done the opposite, just losing games that they need to be winning and not taking advantage. But by and large, I think you can ask the majority of people in baseball, who is the top disappointment? It has to be the Houston Astros. I still believe. I'm still a believer. I still think they can make the playoffs. I still stand by that. I have said it all year long. I have not once wavered from that stance, but I can still say that and sit here right here today and say that they are still the top disappointment so far in the 2024 season. So, winners of 5 in a row, winners of 4 in a row for the Rangers. The Reds at 3, Rangers at 2, Astros at 1. But neither of these teams, none of those teams, are seemingly going to be in my power rankings, though the Astros might be getting closer. But those are my top 3 disappointments so far for the 2024 season. Which leads to power rankings. Early week episode means power rankings are back. Let's start at number 10 with a team that has not been here in a long time. I think they might have crept in early in the year, but they're back. The Boston Red Sox have won 8 of their last 10 games. They're 42-36. They're right there right now with a grasp on a playoff spot for the wild card. I've just been really impressed with the Boston Red Sox. So maybe unpack your bags, Kenley Jansen. Maybe you're going to get a new teammate. Seemingly they were going to be sellers. Came out publicly and said Kenley Jansen's probably going to be moved. You can bank on that. And here they are, winners of 8 of their last 10 games. They're well above 500 at this point. They're fine in terms of if the season ended right now, they'd be in a playoff spot. So maybe they're buyers now. We'll see what they do. But if they keep playing like this, they absolutely have turned their season around and are going to look to buy instead of be sellers. They're here at 10. At number 9, the Minnesota Twins, 43-35, winners of 7 of their last 10 games. All of these records are entering the new week. Winners of 7 of their last 10 continue to creep into more and more of a playoff spot. I would say up that division race, but the Guardians have really run away with that. But the Twins are now the team that I expected them to be at the beginning of the year when they were just really a poor team at the time. So the Twins come in at number 9. At number 8, down 1 spot, the Milwaukee Brewers, 45-33. 500 baseball in their last 10 games. They're fine. They've been playing good baseball all year. They're in first place in that NL Central, but just had to bump them down 1 because they've just been treading water. And there is a team that jumped them, and quite a few teams that is not anymore. But at number 7, I'm going to go with the Seattle Mariners, also down 1 spot. They're 45-35, winners of 5 of their last 10, 500 baseball. They're not taking advantage of the schedule where they need to. They're playing the worst team in the National League, and they lose a series to them with a huge lead in the division. If I'm the Seattle Mariners, or if I'm the fans, I am frustrated. We had a 10-game lead in the American League West, 10 games. And fast forward 5 days, and that's dwindled down to 6 games. You lose 4 games in the standings in 5 days. And all of a sudden you think, oh God, now we're in trouble because these teams behind us have a better offense than us. And if they get rolling, they're capable of being really good. We have the benefit of the best rotation in baseball, perhaps. Maybe not the best offense, maybe not even a top half of the league offense, but we can pitch. And with a 10-game lead in the division, I love where we're at. They lost that quickly, and they've lost a spot in the standings down to number 7. At number 6, up 4 spots, the Atlanta Braves, 43-32 entering the new week, winners of 8 of their last 10. The Braves were in danger of falling out of the power rankings. They slid all the way down to number 10, which is the lowest they've been in, honestly, years of me doing this and doing power rankings. But they're playing much better. They are a very good team. They just kind of had to figure out their identity. Their identity entering this year was we have a Cy Young candidate in Spencer Strider, and we have the reigning MVP in Ronald Acuna Jr. They lost both of those guys. They lost Strider early. They lost Acuna for the year in the last month or so, and really have to figure out their identity again. Are they good enough to win? Are they good enough to be a playoff team? Are they good enough to win the World Series as is? My answer to that is yes. But that doesn't mean that they didn't have to go through some changes and figure themselves out and figure out a lineup without Acuna and how that looks. And seemingly they're starting to do that and playing much better baseball again, as I believed they would. So the Braves come in at number 6. At number 5, down 1 spot, the Los Angeles Dodgers, 48-32. 48-31 entering the new week, down 1 spot. Went out to Dodger Stadium this week, saw a game in that series against the Angels. Shohei's former team hits a homer in his second at bat against his former team, which is just, of course he did, but not playing great baseball, not playing bad baseball, didn't slide them down 1 because of anything they've necessarily done poorly. But we'll hear why in a second, why they're down 1. But they are kicking off the top 5 at 48-31. At number 4, the Baltimore Orioles. Losers of 3 in a row, 49-28. This is my American League winner, by the way. I have the Orioles in the World Series. They kind of got exposed this weekend against the Houston Astros, a team that is the number 1 most disappointing storyline for me in 2024. The Houston Astros, they are starting to turn it around. They sweep the Orioles at home, 49-28. They were 49-25 when they got swept by the Astros. So they've now lost 3 in a row. I bumped them down 2 spots. I do believe they're fine. I do worry a bit about that about the loss of Kyle Bradish. That was a big reason for me having them in the World Series, is because you add Corbin Burnes, you're going to get Kyle Bradish back. I love Grayson Rodriguez. Next thing you know, you have a 1, 2, 3 in any particular order, at least a 2 and 3 of Corbin Burnes, Kyle Bradish, and Grayson Rodriguez. Now you lose one of those arms. I am worried a bit about them, but I'm not worried about them getting to the playoffs and performing much better this year in the playoffs than they did last year. I could absolutely still see them being a World Series team, but I have them at number 4, down 2 spots. At number 3, up 2 spots. Winners of 5 in a row. They just keep doing it. I'm no longer going to say how surprised I am by them because I watched them play and they just had. I love what Stephen Vogt has done with this team, the way they play baseball, the way they play as an offense together, the way they play as a defense, the way they pitch and close out games. The Cleveland Guardians, 49-26, winners of 5 in a row. They have just dominated this division. They're 7.5 games up as we enter the new week over the Twins in that AL Central. So the Guardians have been phenomenal. I have them here at number 3. At number 2, down 1 spot, the New York Yankees, 52-28. They've only won 3 of their last 10 games. So this is really the first rough patch, the first real slide that I've seen from the Yankees this year. And obviously the injury to Giancarlo Stanton hurts, but they do get Garrett Cole back. The Yankees are fine. I know they haven't played great, but I still have them here at number 2. I do believe they're the best team in the American League. Still, I would give them a slight edge over the Cleveland Guardians, though they're playing better right now. But I have the Yankees here at number 2, which leads back to the number 1 spot. The Yankees had been number 1 for about a month. Back to the number 1 spot in my top 10 power rankings, the Philadelphia Phillies, 51-26. They do it all. The offense is phenomenal. They have 2 Cy Young candidates in Zach Wheeler and Ranger Suarez. Both of them are absolute studs. They have nasty arms in the back end of the bullpen. So I love this team. This is why, for me, the Phillies were my World Series champion, is because, one, that offense, I believe, was going to be better than it was last year with Trey Turner not being a shell of himself for half of the year. I thought he was going to be great. Bryce Harper finding a home for himself at first base. I love the rotation. I love the back end of their bullpen. I love the arms they have back there. I think the Phillies are a full, complete team. They're playing like it this year, 51-26, and back in the number 1 spot in my MLB Power Rankings. So that leaves Boston Red Sox at 10, Minnesota Twins, Brewers, Mariners, Braves, top 5, Dodgers, Orioles, Guardians, Yankees, Phillies, rounding out that number 1 spot. All right, fan questions. Sent out a tweet on Sunday evening saying, hey, new episode coming out, send in some questions. We got some really, really good questions, a lot of them. So I chose 3 that feel really pertinent to what's happening right now in the game of baseball. Number 1 comes from Lisa. She says, Edwin Diaz suspended. Thoughts? In case you didn't see or haven't heard, Sunday at Wrigley Field on Sunday Night Baseball, Edwin Diaz was ejected from the game before even throwing a pitch. Sticky stuff on his hand, immediate ejection, immediate 10-game suspension. That is protocol. If you are ejected, you are suspended 10 games, and that is what's happening to Edwin Diaz. My thoughts on it, Lisa asks. So this gets tricky, and this situation has been tricky ever since they implemented these checks. If you were watching the game, they got a good close-up of Edwin Diaz's hand. It didn't look great. In fact, it looked like he had just eaten a glazed donut. That's what his hand looked like. After the game, he was asked about this. One, the umpire said that his hand was stickier than usual. So Edwin Diaz was asked, "What did you feel like your hand was stickier than usual?" And here's what he said. He said, I think it's the same. They always check me. They let me pitch. I will keep using the same thing because they didn't find anything on my glove, my hat, or my belt. When I hear that comment, a bunch of thoughts immediately come to mind, which is, look, I love Edwin Diaz, but I know nothing was found on your glove, hat, or belt, but it was found on your hand, and it looked pretty sticky. So I don't know. I wouldn't suggest going out with the exact same thing. Why would you risk potentially getting ejected again? I mean, that doesn't feel like the answer. So then the crew chief, Vic Carapazza, was asked about this after the game. He said, it definitely wasn't rosin and sweat. We've checked thousands of these. I know what that feeling is. This was very sticky. All right. Those are all the quotes out of the way. Here's my thoughts. Do I think Edwin Diaz had something too sticky on his hand? My gut says yes. Again, his hand did look like he had just eaten 8 glazed donuts at once. My gut says yes. Can I say for 100% sure yes? No, I cannot. Can the crew chief, Vic Carapazza, say for 100% certainty that it was not sweat and rosin? No, he can't. And that is my issue with this. And it has been from the beginning, is it's too subjective. Vic Carapazza or any umpire checking his hand can go out and say, I know sweat and rosin because we've done 1,000 of these checks. This doesn't feel like that. This feels too sticky. We're going to have to eject you. And that's where my problem comes in, is that there's no way of putting a number on it or being able to clarify what exactly the substance is. And that doesn't sit well with me. We have guys getting suspended. We have teams that are in the throes of a fantastic run, trying to get into a playoff spot and trying to make a run, losing their all-star closer because an umpire said, I've done a lot of these tests, and trust me, this was too sticky. Well, I'm sorry. I don't know you, Vic Carapazza, but I don't trust you. I don't trust you to know for 100% certainty that it's not sweat and rosin, because there's no way of knowing right now. There's no tool that we can give umpires to pull out of their back pocket, test the substance they have, or take the glove or take his hand somewhere and test it. I really struggle with him getting suspended and the Mets getting worse as a team because the umpire just thinks it was too sticky. Am I saying it was or wasn't? I'm not. I'm saying we need to figure out a system. It's 2024. An umpire just thinking, I think it's too sticky is unacceptable for me. And that's why this doesn't sit well with me. It never has. By the way, there's been 7 pitcher suspensions and ejections for sticky stuff after these checks. 3 of them have been New York Mets. That feels weird to me, but seems like a different conversation for a different day. This doesn't sit well with me because it's just way too subjective. So thank you for that question, Lisa. Next up comes from Gil. He says, are the Mariners truly a playoff contender? They seemingly can't win on the road and dropped a series to the worst team in the National League this weekend. Literally dropped 4 games of the division lead in 5 days. Also, is Logan Gilbert underrated? Should he be an all-star? A lot of different questions there. I'll start with, are the Mariners truly a playoff contender? Absolutely, 100%. How can you not say they're a playoff contender? They have the best rotation in baseball. We know who the Mariners are. They have a fantastic rotation, potentially the best rotation in baseball, best rotation in the American League, and a below average offense. And the question is always going to be, with this roster for the Mariners, the question will always be, they are definitely a playoff contender with that rotation. Can they get there? And if they can get there, they're going to do some damage because nobody wants to face them in the playoffs. But the answer to, are they a playoff contender? Yes, absolutely. They just have big offensive issues. And for me, I get frustrated because you have a rotation in their prime. So many pitchers that are just dominant and either in their prime or entering their prime. You have Logan Gilbert, who you mentioned. Brian Wu has been really good. Luis Castillo, George Kirby. This is a rotation that if I look at it from the outside and I'm an owner or I'm a GM, I say, man, this is our window. What are we doing? Let's go add some bats and go win this thing. If you add 2 bats to that lineup, and I'm not talking about some of the bats that they typically add at the deadline or in the offseason. I'm talking about go add a top of the line, and I don't know what that looks like right now. I don't know who's going to be sellers. Every team that I think is going to be a seller, and is Pete Alonso going to be on the block? Is JD Martinez going to be on the block? Well, now I don't know. What are the New York Mets going to do? The Mets are playing great. The Mets have Grimace on their side. Nobody wants to play the Grimace Mets. Nobody. They're fantastic. So is Pete Alonso even going to be available? But that's the type of bat I'm talking about. I'm not talking about some of these other additions we see from them and think, wow, what does that really do? Over the last couple of years, the addition of Colton Wong, the addition of Jorge Polanco, and this is nothing against those guys. And in fact, I liked the signing of Jorge Polanco, but did I think at the time that was enough to send this Mariners offense over the top? No. They should have gone to add JD Martinez in the offseason. That's a frustrating one for me. Add your DH, plug him into the 3 or 4 hole of your lineup every single day, protect him have Julio Rodriguez with some protection, and next thing you know, your lineup looks so much different. But they never make that move, and it's so frustrating to me because this rotation is ready to win. This Seattle Mariners rotation is World Series ready, but the lineup ain't even close, and they seemingly never go add what they need to. So I went down a bit of a tangent, but Gil, yes, they're a playoff contender. Yes, I believe in the Mariners. Yes, they need to add. Yes, Logan Gilbert is underrated, but that's just because he plays up in Seattle and not a ton of people stay up late enough to watch him pitch every night. And yes, he should be an all-star. Whew. Answered all of those. All right. Last question comes from Paul, and it is about Paul Skeens. Should Paul Skeens be an all-star this year? I love this question. I've had this same question back and forth in my head for a while. Here's my now answer. As we sit on June 25th, my answer is yes. Paul Skeens should be an all-star. Let's look at his numbers. I know he hasn't pitched a ton, but he has started 8 games this year. And here's his numbers. 4-0. He's thrown 46 and a third innings pitched. He's 4-0. He has 61 strikeouts and 46 in the third inning, only 8 walks, 61 to 8 strikeout to walk ratio, an ERA plus of 192. Again, If you're not exactly sure what that means, 100 is average across the board in baseball. 192 means you are 92% better than the rest of the league, than that average baseline. 192 ERA plus with a 2.14 ERA. His last outing over the weekend threw 102 miles an hour in the seventh inning on his last pitch of the outing. I believe it was his 98th pitch. Throws it, scoreboard check, gave it a little velo check out there on the scoreboard, walked off the field with a massive grin on his face because why not? Completing 7 innings, throwing 102 on your last pitch, turning around for a velo check in the outfield, and it reads 102 miles an hour. God, standing ovation from the crowd. The dude is an absolute star, and he is an all-star. When I think about the all-star game, one, I have an internal battle about this, and here's why I haven't been on board yet until very recently with Paul Skeens being an all-star, because it should be about body of work so far, and all-star games matter. When you fire up a baseball reference page, when you look at guys and see 1 all-star game in his career, 7 all-star games in his career, that stuff matters. And I think a guy needs to have the body of work to show that. So what I'm saying here with this answer is, should Paul Skeens be an all-star right now? Well, luckily, we're not deciding all-star game guys right now, especially the pitchers. That comes from the manager as we get closer to the all-star game. So he'll have a few more starts under his belt. Again, the all-star game is mid-July, so we're about 3 weeks away from the all-star game. That means he's going to get 2 to 3 more starts. And I think if he pitches well, that's what I think it's going to come down to. If he throws well over his last few starts before the All-Star game, he should be an All-Star game. He should be an All-Star. If he doesn't, I think he might miss out. But the All-Star game is about putting the biggest stars of the game on a massive stage at the middle of the year and letting them go out and do their thing. I don't know if the Pirates are going to love it, but I would sure love to see Paul Skeens coming out of the bullpen, throwing 103 miles an hour, punching guys out in his 1 inning of work. Would love to see that. So I think he should be an all-star if he continues to pitch well as he has been. He's already the big favorite to win the NL Rookie of the Year award. And think of that. A big favorite, the big favorite a couple weeks ago was Shota Imanaga. They've kind of gone in opposite directions. And by that, I mean, one, Paul Skeens has gotten to the big leagues, which was a big first step. And he's been fantastic. And Imanaga has gotten roughed up a bit in his last 5 starts. 3 of them have not been very good. So he's gone in an opposite direction. Paul Skeens has gone in a great direction. Some interesting stats for me. This is why I don't say Paul Skeens should be an all-star this year without putting a good bit of thought into it and looking at some statistics. Here's a good one. He has, in his first 8 MLB starts, that's right now, he's had 8 MLB starts, 60 plus strikeouts. He's at 61. 60 plus strikeouts and 0 losses in their first 8 MLB starts. Masahiro Tanaka, Paul Skeens, and nobody else in baseball history. Nobody else. Think about that. And again, when Skeens got brought up, there have been a lot of big prospects come up this year. Paul Skeens, Jackson Holliday. When we're talking about these guys, we had a conversation earlier of who were the biggest and most sought after debuts in history of baseball. And I think number 1 on that list is Steven Strasburg. Strasburg and Bryce Harper are absolutely on that list. But, Skeens is one of those guys as well. So Skeens and Steven Strasburg comparison is wild at this point. Look at these numbers. Through their first 6 starts of their career, Steven Strasburg, a 2.45 ERA. Paul Skeens, a 2.43 ERA. Innings pitched, 36.2 for Strasburg, 33.1 for Paul Skeens. Strikeouts, 53 for Strasburg, 46 for Skeens. An opponent batting average, 215 for Strasburg, 213 for Paul Skeens. So a lot of hype for those two and a lot of living up to that hype so far in their career. So, Paul, thank you for the question. Should Paul Skeens be an all-star this year? I'm going to say here on June 25th that I think if he continues to have 2 or 3 more good starts, not even great, good, not great starts from here through the all-star game selection for the pitchers, I absolutely think he should be an all-star. So thank you all for those questions. We will keep doing this every episode. Still don't exactly know what the schedule is going to look like, but I do know we're back, and I do know more episodes will be coming. So thank you all for bearing with me here in the middle of the year while we kind of had to figure out the studio situation and a schedule situation. Still figuring that out, but mostly things are falling into place, and episodes of Flippin' Bats are back, and I couldn't be more excited about that. This show means the absolute world to me. You all that are listeners and watchers and viewers and fans of the show literally mean the world to me. So I always want to do my best to update you all every step of the way. So whether you're watching on YouTube right now or listening on Spotify or Apple or wherever, thank you all. Make sure you're following, subscribed. It really helps and helps you stay updated when something new comes out and really helps the show. So make sure you're subscribed, following wherever you listen to your podcast. Make sure you follow along on all social media. We put out some great stuff there: Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. And again, you can watch everything on YouTube as well. But Flippin' Bats is back, baby. Baseball is rolling right now. We're about halfway through the season, which is wild to think about. The All-Star game is around the corner. Thank you all for listening. I really appreciate it. Until next time, which will be really, really soon, much sooner than it was before this episode. So make sure you're following so you get all those updates. But until next time, my friends, that does it. This has been another episode of Flippin' Bats. Remember, find your bat and flip it.